Hello, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. My name is Steve Dukran. I'm the town engineer. We're here to discuss the roads being paved in 2022. That's this year. We have invited all residents on those abutting those streets, but we've opened up the meeting to the public. In past years, we have held outreach meetings in neighborhoods. But this year, with COVID and with increased number of streets we've added the preservation techniques. We're using the Zoom format, and hopefully we have a good session. I'm going to read a script regarding how this Zoom session is going to operate. Attendees will be muted, and their cameras will be deactivated until they are recognized by the meeting host. There will be a comment period after each section. If an attendee has a question during this virtual meeting, use the raise hand function during the public comment periods, and the host will unmute you to allow you to ask your question. When joining by phone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute your phone audio when called upon. All right, with that, let me just do some more introductions. Again, my name is Steve Dukran. I am the primary host. I have been 2 years with the town as a town engineer. Joining us and doing the detail on the presentation is Stefan Chertoville, who is the project manager of the roads program. He serves as an engineer in the engineering division, and he's been with us for 3 years. Other hosts doing the administration of the Zoom session are Chris Carmody from the town manager's office and Anna Trout from Public Works. I'm sure we have other attendees who are officials of the town, from the Public Works Commission and maybe some other elected appointed boards.
Yeah, I think it's all right.
This meeting is going to be recorded and will be available on the website. And so going to the first slide. Anna, are you sharing the screen?
I'll pull it up. Hold on.
You pull it up? No, Chris. Okay, so the next slide. So this is what we're going to try to cover this evening. We're going to give an overview of what this program is about. And then Stefan will talk about the different treatments and the roads that have been selected. And we will touch on some other aspects like the budget, utility coordination, irrigation impacts to your lawn irrigation, and then we will close with discussion on our stormwater permit, better known as the MS4. Like mentioned, we'll have breaks for questions and answers, and like I mentioned before, we will ask you to raise your hand and we'll be recognized. So, the next slide. So in order to give you a little introduction of how we got here, I want to give you some background. We started this summer with a condition survey of our pavement of the road network, 108 miles of public streets, and got the results in the form of what we call pavement condition index, better known as PCI, that ranges between 0 and 100. The graph on the right side shows how your road deteriorates. A new road has a PCI of 100, and it deteriorates slowly at first and then accelerates as it gets older. So we use a strategy to develop a program for repairing these streets. This strategy is somewhat of a new approach the town is using, where you try to preserve what's good and rehabilitate what's bad. And the graph shows the split between preservation and rehabilitation. This allows us to spend the money across the board, even a cross section of streets, good ones, fairly good ones, as well as those that have fallen into deterioration. The net result is that we have more good roads to travel on in any particular year. And if we continue that strategy in the years to come, we will raise that overall condition index. Today it's 67 out of 100. That's the average PCI. A few years ago, it was high, it was 78. So we were heading down in the wrong trend. Traditionally, we have just waited till streets fell into the lower level, lower deterioration, and then we're applying more dollars at that point. The graph shows $1 of preventive maintenance as opposed to $8 to $10 on rehabbing your streets. So when you put the criteria and the available budget into the program, the computer program, it generates a list of streets to preserve as well as to rehabilitate. And so the funds that are currently available for this year, 2022, we have generated the list of streets as well as what the treatments are for those streets for this year. And Stefan will discuss those next. Again, after each session, we will ask you to give your comments or questions. So I'll turn it over to Stefan for the next discussion.
Thank you, Steve. Next slide. All right. Thank you, everyone. Once again, my name is Stefan. I'm a public works engineer for the town of Concord, and I'm going to be managing the roads program this season. Everyone who's on that call received the letter that we sent. Email is located at the bottom of that letter. Any question from point on till the end of the construction season, please forward them to me directly by email and I'll get back to you. All right. As Steve mentioned, this year we're going to do some traditional reconstruction methods and also some preservation. I'm going to go through and explain what we mean by traditional reconstruction methods and preservation. As part of our traditional reconstruction method, we have full depth reconstruction and cold in place recycling. The list that is in front of you right now is the list of streets that are candidates for either one of these treatments, and I'll tell you why further ahead. Next slide. So full depth reconstruction. This treatment is intended for a roadway that has outlived its useful life. It is considered to be the most aggressive resurfacing treatment and most costly. As you can see on the left, the picture on the left, the entire pavement structure is completely pulverized to a depth of 14 of 20 inch. Most of the pulverized material is reused as a sub base. After the sub base is installed, a minimum of 4 inch of new pavement is laid on top of that in mostly 2 phases. Full depth reconstruction has pros and cons. Pros for a full depth reconstruction is that you could change the road profiles if you need to make some changes to the road. You can narrow the road if you feel that the road was too wide to start with, or if you need to make a radius smaller. The cons of full depth reconstruction: it is the most costly method to reconstruct a road. It's a timely procedure, and it's also the most disruptive reconstruction method for abutters. Then on the right-hand side, we have cold in place recycling. It's similar to full depth, but with one difference, is that a machine, as you can see on the picture on the right, it's a train of equipment where only the existing pavement is pulverized and is added with additives and cement, Portland cement, and it's relayed instantaneously on the road. So the road is open to traffic that same day on a new binder layer. And then within 2 or 3 weeks, the contractor would come back and place a top layer of hot mix asphalt or microsurfacing on top of that to finish it off. Cold in place also has its pros and cons. The pros of the cold in place is that it's less costly to do than full depth reconstruction. It's a less disruptive reconstruction method for abutters, as there's less that goes into it. And there's also less pollution because less material is used and less trucks are used to haul material back and forth from the site. The cons is that you're pretty limited in the changes you could do to the profile or even the width of the road. What you have already existing is what you'll end up with. So if anybody who lives on the list, could you go back to the previous slide, Chris? Anybody on that list that has questions about cold in place recycling or full depth recycling, now the floor is open to you to ask any questions.
I see someone by the name of Ian. We'd like to recognize you, Ian, if you would please tell us your full name and address.
My full name is Ian Orr, O-R-R, no relation to Bobby. I live at 61 Stacy Circle, which is on the cul-de-sac loop of Stacy Circle. On the piece of paper that you sent us, the letter you sent us, you mentioned reconstruction. And we have been asking for, or we have been talking for a long time on the street about having it reconstructed. Now, does this process include, as an example, putting in the fiber optic from the light company so we can get internet access?
Okay, I can answer that. When we said reconstruction, we meant reconstruction, the pavement and the road base. We will coordinate with utilities. We're going to mention that later on in the presentation. Utilities, the light plant being one of those companies or agencies. They have received our list of streets already and we're waiting for feedback from them. I'll tell you, typically the answer regarding putting in new underground utilities from the various utility companies is it's a problem because of their funding. These are very intense capital costs, and they sometimes don't have these programmed. But we will wait for them to give us that answer. If they intend to put in any underground, then we'll have to have them do that ahead of us doing any road work. So that answer is yet to come.
Thank you.
We'd now like to recognize Carlin Reed.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits. And on the form that we were given, it shows for these streets that the planned repair method is reconstruction, but the phrase cold in place recycling does not occur on the sheet. Of the streets listed on the screen right now, Alford to Commonwealth Ave, which ones are candidates for cold in place recycling?
Thank you. It's Catlin or Karen?
Carlin.
Carlin. Thank you, Carlin. So as of right now, we still have to do some more testing to decide which one of those streets is a good candidate for cold in place recycling. And the testing will involve taking some cores to see if the existing asphalt is adequate for cold in place recycling. So in short, until we get those lab results back, we won't be able to tell which of those streets will get cold in place recycling and which will get full depth recycling. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. We'll move on to recognize David Wilson, please.
Good evening. I'm David Wilson. I live at 35 Raymond Road. I've lived there for 30 years. During the time that we've lived here, I've always felt that our road was unnecessarily wide. Its paving area is 28 feet wide, and it's a cul-de-sac with 6 houses on it. Also, it's dead straight, and I believe that it would look better with some curvature to it. What is the process for requesting that if the road is reconstructed, that it be reconstructed slightly differently than the way it exists now? And I must add that I haven't had the opportunity to discuss this with the neighbors. This has come up fairly suddenly for me. I didn't realize that this was in the works. Thank you.
So David, so you bring up some questions that we have been getting recently regarding road width. Some folks are asking, can we get away, or can we reduce the road width and reduce the runoff and have more environmental benefits? It's something that we have to examine carefully. Some neighbors, and you did bring up whether your neighbors will on the same page as you are regarding that, because if you narrow the road too much and then you have parking in the street, then suddenly the road can't accommodate an emergency vehicle like a fire truck and so on. So we have to make sure we meet that standard. As well as parking, if someone were to have a party, for instance, and they have high attendance, is there enough room on the street to have all those vehicles parked and still have two-way traffic and making it safe? So that's why it has to be examined carefully. We don't have a minimum standard as such. It all depends on what the fire department sets. But certainly there are roads that can be narrowed in maybe in certain locations. For instance, some intersections may be too wide and they get narrowed up. We have to look at turning movements for larger vehicles. If someone should have a delivery with a large vehicle, can that vehicle make that turn as well? So the first step, like you suggested, if you can help us by talking to your neighbors so that we can understand what the neighborhood need is regarding road width as well as road curvature. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with the length of, I think, what did you say, Raymond? If a curvature can be introduced safely.
Raymond Road.
Raymond, right. If we can add a curvature to the road within the right of way without, going into impacting roadside trees and other features, we can do that if it makes sense altogether. Later on, we may be talking about cost. You would think narrowing the street would be cheaper than trying to rebuild a street in its width. But if you introduce a curve and suddenly you're excavating and creating, in order to create a new road, essentially that's what it is, at a much higher cost. So there'll be constraints that will limit what we can do with any road. But we'll take it under advisement. We'll look at it, a little bit more, and we'll get back to you. We do have your contact information, and we'll certainly get you an answer on that.
And also, Raymond, it's Stefan. If I remember correctly, I think your street has existing drainage structures on it. So that's another impediment to narrowing a road, then also it becomes a drainage work also to move those drainage to put them closer at the new gutter line now. So it's hard. We can't really answer, but we'll take a look at it.
I don't see any other raised hands at this time.
All right, we'll move on to the next section. Stefan will talk about the next set of streets and treatments.
Next set of treatments. Next slide, Chris. Next one. All right. The third treatment that's still considered a traditional reconstruction is mill and overlay. This type of treatment is applied to an existing asphalt in good or fair condition in the PCI range of 60 to 80. This pavement preservation is cost-effective approach to pavement management. It provides a faster application time than alternative conventional approach like FDR and CIR. For that approach, only an inch and a half or two of the existing pavement is removed and hauled out immediately. And then the road is swept and a new layer of asphalt is placed on that road. As you can see on the picture of the left, that's what that treatment looks like. There is some inconvenience for abutters when the road is being milled. These equipment are pretty big, so traffic might be alternative traffic while the work is being done, but it goes pretty fast. And the list on the right are the streets that have been chosen for mill and overlay. With that said, anybody from the audience that lives on those streets, the floor is open to you right now for questions.
Anna, can you call in the first question?
Yes, we'd like to recognize Tenley. If you could introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Hi, I'm Tenley O'Shaughnessy, and I live at 77 Coolidge Road. I don't think my house is directly on this because I think you're stopping the work where Coolidge meets Oak. But my question was whether there's any coordination with National Grid, with the gas company. There are some known gas leaks on that road, and I'm curious whether they'll be addressed prior to resurfacing it.
The answer is yes. We have sent out the list to National Grid, and they will be getting back to us. If there is work to be done, we will push them to get that work done as soon as possible so we can stay on a schedule to get the road resurfaced.
Okay, now we'd like to recognize Michelle O'Toole.
Thank you. I'm Michelle O'Toole, 31 Maple Court. I was just wondering, I noticed that Bradford Street is on the list, and Maple Court abuts Bradford Street. Maple Court is technically a private road, although it certainly doesn't feel like a private road. It's directly behind Concord Outfitters, Mark's Fencing, a body shop. It's a very busy road. So I was wondering if there's any chance that there's an entryway from Maple Court to Bradford Street, if that could be included on the list for the milling and replacement. It's really in bad shape and it has been for years. I know technically the property owners are supposed to fix it, but that's never going to happen. Any chance?
Yeah. So as we started putting our budgets together late last year, we have been thinking as a department, the Public Works, about how we can help with private streets. And so we've kind of laid, not the groundwork, but at least, I'd say the groundwork for discussions on how we can help with private streets. There's a lot to do in order to put that in place. It is a policy that the town has to adopt. and we're not there yet. The work that we planned here is for the use of public dollars for public streets. And if there's any interfacing with the public street and the private street, which we call it like an apron, an entryway, and that will be needed in order to make the integration between one and the other work better. We will probably do that, but it wouldn't be to any great extent. It'll probably be up to maybe 10 feet or so, is what I assume. I don't know specifically in this case, but we will look at that. But there won't be much that will make a difference, I believe, in what you're requesting.
Right, and I'm not requesting the whole road, not the entire Maple Court, just that entranceway. You take a ride behind Maple Court, you'll know exactly what I mean. There's a very small entrance to Maple Court, and it's just all potholes. It's actually kind of dangerous.
So it'll be just a few feet up, maybe up to 10 feet, in order for us to have a good transition from the private public street into the private street. And we will need a right of entry. We should have to seek in order to work on private property. But we'll take a look as you suggested, and we will see what we can address within our means and within our rights.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Chris, can you put the list of streets back up?
Yep.
So that we can have a frame of reference.
I'd like to recognize Carlin Reed.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I live just off of Unersnack Hill. I know this roads program is going to be more expensive than in past years. Are we going to have a separate warrant article just for the roads program? And if so, do you know how much it's going to be? Thanks.
Okay. So this year's roads program is a little bit more than, say, last year and the year before, because we have a little bit of leftover money from previous years. But what we have planned this year, those lists that you've seen so far, are all within available dollars. What we've requested for the next fiscal year 23, that's going to be in the warrant article. That's a new request for future programs, and we will touch on those in the next couple of slides. So I hope that's answering your question, Carlin. This is pretty much paid for. Again, I got to preface this with saying it's all based on estimates of on what it will cost us in this year in 2022. We have a budget, and we know we are facing increases in costs, construction costs, labor costs, and so on. But even with that, we think our estimates are good, and the lists generated from using the program, the software, are based on monies that we have right now.
We'd now like to recognize Ann Sussman.
Hey, thank you very much. I just want to corroborate what Michelle said about Bradford Street and Maple Court. I work at the Bradford Mill. I'm also have been on the Cultural District. As you know, this area is in the West Concord Junction Cultural District. We expect more and more tourists, travelers, visitors in this area. And to have such a broken street where you're going to have a lot more people biking with the rail trail bridge opening in July, it's just completely hazardous. And the problem with that Maple Court Bradford Street intersection is cars can't see bicyclists or pedestrians walking down the street until they're already into it. It is super dangerous. I'm really worried about someone getting hurt there. So we got to get that street cleared. We got to lower maybe some, you got to just really look at it. And there's going to be more and more people as our cultural district grows, and more people on bikes and walking. And we're not prepared. So you've got to look at it. I appreciate your curiosity, your interest in looking at it, but really understand this is the heart. That street, in a way, is the heart of the West Concord Cultural District. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hey, Anne, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who are the owners of Maple Court?
I think you know that better than I.
Oh, well, it's a private street, so I was wondering.
It's a private street, but I think we need to work together as a community.
Yeah, I wanted to know if it's are they commercial owners or are they just residential owners?
I don't know. I don't have the technical expertise there, but we need to find that out because right now it's a super dangerous condition. And what's going to happen, you're going to have more tourists. See, I come here every day and I see it every day, so I know to expect it. But it's crazy. You cannot see a car emerging from Maple Court unless you're like right in front of the car. It's just crazy hidden. And then it's totally bumped up. It's like asphalt, like completely a kind of a mess. It's really wild. You'd expect that. It's not a dead end. It's people are using it, but it's not, you're an expert at this. You'll see the problem when you go there, but it's bigger now because we are a cultural district now, because many, many more people will be coming, especially after July. And that bridge opens over Route 2. And we have special funding just to promote West Concord and this street and this area as a tourist junction. So we need to make it really easy for people and safe for them to walk. I hope I've made sense.
Yeah, we try to reach in some way to reach out to the owners of that street to see what can be done.
And you walk it and you'll be stunned. It's just super dangerous. And someone could sprain their ankle crossing there. There's just all these crazy potholes. It's just, and it's not safe for bikers. And we're gonna have a lot more bikers when that thing opens over Route 2. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize John Branigan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
John Branigan, 15 Rollingwood Lane, at the intersection with Ornac. Two questions specific to the work on Ornac. Does the work include, excuse me, updating things like the culverts underneath the road? There's a stream, for example, that goes into Madison Field that is pretty blocked at this point, that goes under Ornac in a culvert, or is that a separate project? And then the other question I have is, since this work is being done, is there any way to include consideration for a sidewalk along all or part of Ornac? And this for me is a safety related question.
Okay. Thanks, John. So the first one, does the work include a culvert repair? So what we're presenting today, it's pretty much work for the roadway in addressing pavement needs. That doesn't mean to say that if there are minor issues that can be solved while we do the work, we wouldn't do it. We have the budget to address the pavement needs. We do have some smaller budgets that we get on an annual basis that will take care of smaller issues, maybe drainage issues or sidewalk issues, like maybe a sidewalk that has a tripping hazard, or we're required when we do pavement work, like the mill and overlay or the full depth reconstruction, by law, we need to address sidewalk tip downs. Those are the handicap ramps. So we have requested more budget for the other needs, the other infrastructure needs that fall within our roadway, like the culverts and sidewalks. and crosswalks and other traffic needs. Hopefully we get that increase or some measure of increase in the new budget. But as we look at these roads and put the designs together, we will address certain things that are feasible. For culverts specifically, we are putting together a request for proposals to have our culverts evaluated. We have many culverts, we have 135 or so throughout the town. And they have been, we haven't put enough investments over the years in addressing culverts. And as you might be aware, we had a major failure on Monument Street this last year. And we had to address that on an emergency basis. And obviously that always costs you more. So it's in our interest to know what we have out there and to program, a maintenance program and a replace program in a most prudent fashion. And that's what we're working towards. We will look at this culvert. If it's a blocked culvert and it can be cleared up without a lot of cost, it's something that we may be able to do in conjunction with the road repair. If it's something that's beyond our budget at this point in time, it's something that we will have to program under this evaluation that I just mentioned. And we will also look at the sidewalks. Major sidewalk projects is very costly and therefore cost prohibitive under this program. But if there is a small need that we can address during this project, we will do so. I suspect what you're asking for is a full-fledged sidewalk along the length of Ornac.
It's a conversation I've had with the town in the past. I think even around a couple of the bad bends would be a huge improvement for safety. Would it be appropriate for me to follow up with Stefan on this?
Yes, certainly. We'll keep it in mind. We will put it as a need on our sidewalk program, whether it's near term or long term. But something that
I guess my concern in the fine print from your letter is the 5-year moratorium. So it's I understand you do this and then you don't want to damage your work by doing something later on. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I see no more questions for this section.
Okay, we'll move into the preservation list.
Preservation list. All right, next slide, Chris. All right, preservation now. As Steve mentioned earlier, this year we're introducing preservation techniques. And the intent of that is to make sure that we spend our dollars in an appropriate way to make them go the distance, basically. We try to keep roads that are in a better condition or a good condition at a good condition instead of letting them fall into this bad category where we spend more dollars on reconstruction. So as this is the list of the roads that six streets that we have a suggestion to do 2 types of treatments on them. Asphalt rubber is the one treatment and microsurfacing. Now, let me tell you what asphalt rubber is and microsurfacing. I'll start with microsurfacing. Microsurface is a thin layer, 3/8 of an inch thick, that is applied to an existing paved surface in either 1 or 2 lifts. In the case in Concord, we're gonna do it in 2 lifts to give it a thicker wearing course. The intent of this treatment is to add a tough wearing course coat that will seal and protect the existing pavement and give it a new friction course. So basically we'll be adding a friction course on your existing pavement, which gives more life to your existing road. Asphalt rubber, it's similar. It's about 3/8 and to a 1/2 inch thick. And the difference with asphalt rubber is the emulsifier that is used is it's a crumb rubber, a modified asphalt. So it's a different type of emulsion. It's not straight asphalt emulsion that's used with aggregates. And the asphalt rubber treatment has a surface that is also a little bit rougher than traditional asphalt at the beginning. It has some loose stones, but as it gets more wear and more traffic, it's hard to tell. It becomes similar to asphalt with time. So within a couple of months or to the first winter, next year, you won't be able to tell the difference between asphalt rubber and any other asphalt in town. And also benefits to those two types of preservation techniques is that their application is pretty fast. Contractor could do close to 1 mile a day, and the road is open soon after. So it's less disruptive to abutters, and it's less expensive also. And that's all we're doing for preservation. So now the floor is open again to residents who lives on those streets who have questions about what treatment the streets are going to receive.
I'd like to recognize Ed Tiedemann. Ed, if you would unmute yourself and state what your question is. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Ed Tiedemann, 656 Barrett's Mill Road. I'm actually at the corner of Barrett's Mill Road and College Road on the S curve. I was actually surprised that you're only doing asphalt rubber on Barrett's Mill Road. And the reason is that's pretty beat up. And we get a lot of heavy trucking through there. And, you know, it was redone less than 20 years ago. And it's been pretty cracked now for a number of years. So I was actually surprised why you're just doing asphalt rubber here. And then, for example, on College Road itself, you're doing much more, I think, mill and overlay type work on, which to me gets relatively small amount of traffic. Thank you.
I could answer the question, Steve. Asphalt rubber is the name of the treatment, but there's different steps involved before applying the asphalt rubber. So for your case on Barrett's Mills, which I know, there's some areas that are pretty beat up, which will get a thin layer of asphalt placed on them first. And the cracks on Barrett Mills will also crack seal the road prior to the asphalt rubber. So the first step is to crack seal the road. And then for those certain areas where there is pretty beat up, there's going to be a thin coat of asphalt placed on them. And then finally, the asphalt rubber is going to be placed on it. And the way the asphalt rubber is designed for heavy traffic also. And it's actually better. It's a better result than just mill and overlay due to the composition of what's in the additive and mixture that are used compared to the regular asphalt.
Just wanted to add a couple of notes regarding these treatments. These preservation techniques, microsurfacing and asphalt rubber, as well as the cold in place recycling, we mentioned the rehabilitation technique earlier on. These are new to us. We haven't used this before. I have used a couple of these in another community, but we haven't used this in the town. And so this year we've just chosen some streets to perform these on, somewhat of on a pilot basis to make sure we can manage them well, as well as to see how the neighborhood would react to these as well. For instance, asphalt rubber, just everyone is aware, and it just comes as a surprise. Stefan mentioned the use of chips. So there'll be loose chips in the application. One of the steps, you have a lot of loose chips. Those will be swept up later on, but people may find that, for that day or two, or how long they are there, that it is a condition they don't like. But the end result will be good. We have talked to communities, neighboring communities of Concord about this application, and the end result is really acceptable and very cost effective, and will add life to a road that's not in a very bad condition, but you can get up to 8 years, probably 8 to 10 years in some cases of a good driving surface added to your road. I just wanted to put that out there so that people are aware that we are taking these measures in a more cautious way for the start. If we're successful, we'll see more prevalent use of these methods in the future.
So let me clarify this from your previous comment. This is Ed Tiedemann, Barrett's Mill Road speaking again, that you get 8 to 10 years life out of asphalt rubber. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Yes.
And then when that fails, say 10 years from now, what would then be a typical next step?
So I could answer the question. So the intent of preservation basically is to keep adding wearing courses to your existing surface as needed. So if we do an asphalt rubber in 2022, and 8 or 10 years down the road, when it's that's the life, that doesn't mean 8 to 10 years down the road that you're gonna have a fail road. It's maybe that wearing course will no longer, will have outlived its useful life, and maybe you'll just see your underlying asphalt that you see today back again. So at that point, you could then again crack seal the road and do maybe microsurfacing on it. And the reasoning behind that is the life expectancy of those treatments is a shorter life expectancy, like 8 to 10 years, but the cost is 4 to 8 times lower than FDR. So you could keep doing those surface treatments as you need them down the years, and keep the road at an acceptable driving condition.
So let me follow up on this. What happens to the road surface as it gets worn? Does it just go on the side of the road, or what?
No. So when we say it's going to have loose chips, that's maybe the first couple of weeks to the first month. After your first winter season, when plows hit it, there won't be any more loose materials on it. So nothing's gonna be, and down the road, it's not like when you're not gonna see it on the side of the road when it's outlived its life. It's only for the first couple of weeks you'll have some loose stones present on the street.
Yeah, but I guess you sort of said in 8 to 10 years, I sort of see the current roads, the road surface we have today. So to me, that means it's worn off somewhere and it's had to go someplace.
I see what you're saying, but we're talking about 3/8 of an inch of thickness. So as it wears off, 3/8 of an inch, it's not, I see what you're saying, but it's not like that 3/8 of an inch is going to be
And let me
on the side of the road.
Yeah, let me explain why I'm
one day
saying
to another.
There's a stream going underneath Barrett's Mill Road at this point, a lot of wetlands, which is basically draining right into the Assabet River. So that's why I'm asking those questions. Thank you.
Okay.
So everyone is aware that the town does perform street sweeping on an annual basis. So it not just only picks up, regular debris at the side of the road, but it also picks up, any material that might have worn off from the street. Not just with the asphalt rubber treatment, but with any other road surface issues, the street sweeping, the regular street sweeping will pick up any loose material. So let me see if we have anything else on this.
There are no other questions in this section.
Okay. Then we move into the next area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's your section, Steve. We're talking about the budget.
All right. All right. The reason why we are showing this slide is to show what our budgeting has been for last year, the current year, and the upcoming 2 years. What we project. As you can tell, we get the state's Chapter 90 money, high $600,000 to $700,000 on an annual basis, and the roads capital funds from the town, FY21, 1.25 million, FY22, 1.3. It's what we've had to work with and why our program has been very limited. Our program is based, as I mentioned earlier, where we do an evaluation, get a payment condition index, feed that into our computer software, and then it generates, what our needs are in terms of streets and the treatments, and how we want to get our roads to higher and more acceptable payment condition index on average. Currently, we are at 67. I said 3 years ago, we was 78. In order to get us to high 80s, which is what, condition that's not excellent, but good, very good. For instance, the town of Lexington is currently at, I think, around 80 something. They have had a comprehensive program and their roads are in a very good condition. For us to get there, we need to be spending a lot more money in our pavement management. So we have requested $3.5 million of funds from the town, which we have recommended that they bond that money for us. And with a small increase in FY24, that level of spending we are asking for going forward to get us to a higher average, and then we'll hopefully through just preservation techniques keep that get that number down and be able to preserve our streets for the next 10, 15 years. All right, so the next slide shows how that fits into our overall program for infrastructure within the right of way. We had questions earlier talking about what do we do for sidewalks? What do we do for culverts? What should we do for other types of infrastructure we have, like for instance, traffic improvements, intersection improvements, signal improvements, other types of amenities for bicycles and pedestrians. We have put together this our 5-year plan, budget plan before the town, and it shows that we are looking what we need. $6 million in fiscal year 23, and in some years going up a little bit higher. This is the kind of investment we need as a department to get our infrastructure to a condition that's acceptable and then be able to maintain it. Much of our infrastructure, has not been given the attention they need for many years, and they're deteriorating, and the end result is could be something like what happened on Monument Street with a culvert failure recently. So, to put it in perspective, we need more investments. We need support from the town to get us there. Any questions on dollars? I can feel any questions at this point in time.
No questions are indicated.
All right. Okay. So then the next slide.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone again. So this slide is called Utility Coordination and a Road Moratorium. Basically, it was stated in the letter that was given to you. And what we are the message that we're trying to convey is like Steve said, we communicated with the different utility companies, National Grid, Comcast, Verizon, and CMLP. We gave them our lists, and we're waiting to hear back from them to say if they have any plans to do any additional work that we're unaware of on the street selected for 2022. But what we're asking from you residents is anyone who lives on the street that had plans to get a new gas connection or had plans to do an addition and get a new water line, and you already started the process and you know you were going to do it, contact me by email so we could try to coordinate around your work. What we don't want to do is pave the road and have you come in the next couple of weeks or month and do a trench in it. So that's why there's a 5-year moratorium. We don't want our new roads to have trenches or cuts in them. Trenches and cuts gives water access to the subbase, and with our winters, that water freezes and heaves, and it breaks the road, and we lost everything that we've just done. So please, if you do have any scheduled utility upgrades, contact me and we'll do our best to coordinate around it. If anybody has, not question, but had plans, please contact me directly by email and we'll go from there. Next slide. The next topic on the letter that you received, it's Steve mentioned it earlier also. It's about irrigation system. In the past, we've encountered while we're doing mostly for roads that we're doing major reconstruction, traditional, either full depth reconstruction, mill and overlay, or NCIR. Some residents have their sprinkler system right on the edge of the pavement. So we asked if you can to take the opportunity to move it at least 5 feet away of the edge of the pavement. We'll do our due diligence not to damage anything if we encounter them, but if we do, we'll cap it and we'll give you a central letter notice telling you that we capped it and that you have to move it yourself. Next slide.
I'd like to recognize Jess Eisenhower.
Hi, Steve. Thank you. This is Jessica Eisenhower. I'm on Anson Road. And I know you said that if we had current plans to do something to let you know, but sort of looking at Anson Road, Plainfield Road has gas and it doesn't come up Anson. And as you know, Anson's fairly short. And there has been talk over the years, many years, with the neighbors about maybe having a gas line come up Anson Road. So this has sort of made people stop and think, if that is something that folks would like to consider, is this the right time to reach out to you? But it's not really just one individual or an individual home, it would be a group.
So we're talking about a gas extension from Plainfield.
Correct.
This is something that will have to be brought to the attention of National Grid. Now, have you done that yet? Do you know?
No, it's probably been, we've had quite a bit of turnover. So it's probably been 6 years since the neighbors got together to talk to it. But when I got this letter, I thought this might be the right time to address it.
Right. We will make a note of it and we will ask that question of National Grid and we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. All right, any more questions on the roads? Otherwise, Stefan will talk a little bit about our MS4 stormwater management permit.
No other
Okay.
questions at this time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. As a last topic today, I'll take this time to introduce everybody who's on the Zoom today to the stormwater management, also called MS4, which stands for Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Basically, it's an EPA program that started in 2003 and is being implemented by all municipalities in phases. The purpose of this program is to reduce and ultimately eliminate contaminants from entering the town's rivers, ponds, and wells. As residents, your guys are on the front line. A heavy burden of the contaminant that goes into our ponds, rivers, and wells get there by the drainage on the streets. So any runoff from your driveway or any illicit dumping of oil, paints, chemical, that gets to the catch basin and ultimately goes to our rivers. And we're trying to mitigate and eliminate those risks. So be aware of what you're doing. If you could go on the town website, you could get specific information on different topics. There's more topics than what is presented on that slide, things that you can do yourself to help the town meet their goals with the MS4. There's lawn care, there's pet waste, there's people with septic system. There's different things that you could do. Like I said, go on the website. There was that barcode on the letter that you received. Scan that and that will direct you directly to the town's stormwater management page, and you could see all the information there. And on that note, my email is on the bottom of the page again. There's also a phone number, but as I mentioned in the beginning, I prefer email. Any question from now till the end of construction this fall, please contact me directly.
I see that we have an inquiry from John Branigan.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you for presenting this today. Could you give any idea of the schedule that you're looking at, when this work would start and finish this year, and maybe an example of pick a street and a method, how long those streets would be tied up?
I could answer that question, Steve. John, thank you for your question. I could give you an overall schedule. I can't really go to specifics as of right now, and I'll tell you why. Right now, we're still in the planning phase. After today's meeting, our plan is to start working on any questions that we get from people and hopefully getting those contracts out to bid in February, early March. And if that holds true, we'll be able to get an answer to a bid or return bids by May, and hopefully by May or June, we'll have signed contracts. So once we have a signed contract, if you receive that letter, that first barcode, once we have signed contract, we'll update the website again with more scheduling information. But as it pertains to individual streets, once we get a contract and we get a schedule from the contractor, I'll once again contact each street with door hangers, with particulars of when construction is going to start, what to expect, and when it's going to end. But right now, I can't go into specifics because we don't have that information yet.
So let me add some more to that answer, John. So the construction schedule typically is late May through end of October, and We try to get done with all our paving by the end of October because then it becomes too cold to pave, and the pavement, especially a finished pavement, doesn't stick well. You need good operating temperatures to apply pavement. And then you may have to do some striping too. You still need warm temperatures to do so. We believe our preservation type methods can be done within the earlier part of that construction season. But it all depends on first having that contract in place, as Stefan mentioned, but secondly, the availability of the contractors. There aren't many contractors doing these preservation techniques. And but they have many towns that they're servicing, and we will have to find our slot when they can come to town. We'll have to have the roads ready and so on and so forth for them. The rehab techniques, the roads that will have more work, there are several steps to those. And they would involve, if it's a reclamation, for instance, you'll have to have the road reclaimed. Then the structures like catch basins and manholes and so on adjusted. Or first they binder paved, and adjust the structures, and then come to the final pavement and any striping later on. So with all those several steps, that could take place over a period of time. And it could be, it could involve having a road opened up for at least 2 months. Similarly, for mill and overlay, you may end up having roads open for 2 months. And with the amount of work we have, a contractor come to town, get a couple of roads done, and then they will leave town, go deal with somebody else, and then come back later on. So we have to leave it open to them. In order for us to get bids that are competitive and affordable, you really have to give contractors that flexibility. If you squeeze them into any tight schedule, your bids will become unaffordable, and we'll be able to do less roads. So I hope that gives you an idea of what kind of schedule we're dealing with. But
yeah, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
A follow-on question, and I'm sorry, I think we're running over time, but
Okay.
someone had mentioned earlier that the asphalt and rubber, you were able to do a mile a day in theory. It sounds like a big difference between a mile per day of work versus leaving the road in an open condition for 2 months if it's mill and overlay. For example, Barrett's Mill Road, if you're talking about asphalt and rubber, would that be done faster than a section that's mill and overlay, or is that an oversimplification?
Yes, that's correct. Like I said before, there are steps in the asphalt overlay. So as a first step, before the contractor comes in, apply that treatment, they'll come in and crack seal, take care of any major imperfection of the road with a shim layer of asphalt. So that could be 2 different days and not, they could be spread out. So they could come in this week and do asphalt rubber, and do the crack seal,
Mm-hmm.
which is not really disruptive to abutters. And then the following week, come back and do the shim on those spot repairs. But as it pertains to the asphalt rubber, that will be done in 1 day.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah.
I'd like to recognize Carlin Reed.
Thank you, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits. And gentlemen, this has been a very productive, wonderful, and useful program. Alan and Anna, Steve and Stefan, thank you very much for this. I really have learned a lot. It's been very helpful. Thank you.
welcome.
Welcome.
Well, we're about 5:10 now. I think we've got a lot of questions. We'll take them back and we will work on them. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to email Stefan. The email was up on the screen earlier. I did provide his phone number as well. So please reach out to us and we'll be happy to reply to you. And thank you for attending and thank you for the questions. And hope we can get this project done move on to the next one. And also hope as we go to the town meeting that everyone sees the need to support better funding so that we can do more and get our roads up to a more acceptable standard. Again, I appreciate everyone's attention and attendance, and hope to hear from you or see you soon.
Thank you
you.
again.